Good morning. Anybody who works on Hondas will recognize this sound. This is an '07 Honda Accord with a 3-liter V6 engine, and the noise you're hearing is coming from the power steering system. Notice how as I turn the steering wheel lock to lock, the sound changes. That noise is caused by a pinhole leak of air being drawn into the power steering system, usually on the intake side where the pump creates a vacuum. Interestingly, you'll notice the Honda fluid reservoir is mounted below the level of the pump, which creates a permanent vacuum, especially on the intake side of the pump. So if you get a pinhole leak anywhere above the fluid reservoir, instead of simply leaving a drip of fluid, the Honda design sets us up for air being drawn into the system, causing noise. And by far the most common cause of this noise is a leaking intake O-ring right here, which allows air into the system, causing that distinctive sound. So our first effort to deal with this noise is to swap out the intake O-ring, and that didn't help. Then we replaced a high-pressure O-ring, and the problem remains. The last time I had this engine running, I noticed a small amount of oil on the line of the pump cover seal right here, making me think that the degeneration of this weird-shaped seal inside the pump was a likely cause. So we're left with the decision as to whether to rebuild a pump or to simply swap it in for an aftermarket pump. We decided on the latter, and that's the plan today. So the first thing I'm going to do is to do a flush of the system to replace it with new, genuine Honda fluid. And so for the first part of that, I'm going to take out what's in the reservoir and replace it with clear. So I'm just going to vacuum the old fluid out. So this one here is the return hose to the reservoir, and this one goes to the pump. So I'm going to take the return hose off now while the container is empty and reroute it to the container. So I've taken that return hose, unhooked it, and hooked it in through a male adapter to another hose that goes down to a drain held with a clip. And on the intake side, I put a short length of hose right here, and I've raised it above the level of the container, and so that's not going to overflow. These may leak a little bit, but it shouldn't be a big issue. I'm going to push things out of the way of the belt and then start the engine after filling it up with good fluid. This is what I'm using here from the dealer. 3 350 ml containers. Now the reason I'm doing this before I put in the new pump is that it's hard on a pump to pump air, and so because there's going to be a bit of air in the line when we do this, I may as well do it now. Well, that's frothy, ugly looking stuff. Just a few seconds of the engine running ran that reservoir dry. So I'm going to fill it up with a second container. We'll do that at a second time. So the pump I got does not come with a new pulley. This is a 19 millimeter, so I'm going to try and get it off now just because it'll be a little easier to get around to the mounting bolts with the pulley off. So let's do this. There we are. The belt tensioner is down here. This is a 14, and we just loosen off the serpentine belt. Oh, look at this. On the V6 engine, the motor mount, the engine mount, gets in the way of getting that pulley off at this stage. And so now I understand why in the dealer's manual they recommended removing the motor mount. I may not need to do that, and so I'm going to try and take the pulley off without doing that. Okay, let's get this hose out of the way. One less thing to deal with. Next is the high pressure line. These two are 10s. Okay, now we've got two mounting bolts. The first one is here, and then the second is right here. I'll take those off now. This is a small head ratchet with a 12 millimeter socket. Well, this bottom bolt turned into a little bit of a struggle. I'm glad I had the right tools. In retrospect, I think what I did there was a long cut. In retrospect, if I had to do this again, I'd take off the engine mount. It's not that difficult to get it off, and gives you much better access to this bolt. I've got a screwdriver in here holding it. This is tightened to 47 foot-pounds. Now let's replace the high pressure O-ring. Just take a little pick and then just pry this out. You get extra points if you don't gouge the surrounding metal. There's the old one there. This pump came with O-rings, so I'll use those. So I took this off thinking I'd have to replace the O-ring there, and in fact they already had an O-ring on there already, so that was kind of a wasted effort, but at least I know it looks good. Doing this with the pump on the car is a lot harder, so I would, if you're going to do this, I would do this off the car. So for those of you who care about torque specs, here they are. So after that I refilled the system. I turned the steering wheel lock to lock about 20 times. I restarted the engine, took it for a test drive. It took a while to clear all the air, and in fact when I came back I thought, gee, I wondered if that intake O-ring is bad, and so I fiddled with the new O-ring a little bit, and all of a sudden everything was fine. Say, if you got this far, I appreciate you coming along. I'd appreciate any insight you might have. Thanks for watching.